Happy Christmas Eve, everyone. Hope you're enjoying and ready for Santa to come. Here is chapter 24. The end. All was white and silent. Minutes ticked by. Eventually, Winston managed to open his eyes and a great buzzing and ringing sounded in his ears. He crawled out from under the snow. Winston had no idea where he was or even how far he'd travelled from Fortescue's. What am I going to do now? He whispered to himself. Everything seemed hopeless. The letter, Christmas, finding somewhere safe and warm for himself out of the storm. He stood as best as he could in the wind and looked all around. He felt utterly lost and completely alone. Across the great expanse of the rooftop where he had crash landed, someone was moving about. He glimpsed a blur of red. He realised that this could be his only hope of getting down from this roof to safety. The snow whirled and the figure disappeared into the whiteness. Where did it go? Winston wondered. He was so tired and achy now, he could barely stand. The figure in red swam into view. He looked again, trying to make out what it was. He gasped. It couldn't be. Wait, cried Winston. Wait! But his squeaks were snatched away by the wind. He'd have to give chase, he thought. So he pitter-pattered across the roof as fast as his tiny feet could carry him, waving the envelope above his head. The snow was coming thick and fast. The wind was howling, and everything was white and confusing. It was like being in a snow globe that was being madly shaken about. Wait! Winston squeaked again. He couldn't walk another step. A blast of wind knocked him over and he landed on top of the envelope with a bump. He was too exhausted to get up again, so he just lay there shivering. A few moments later, the figure appeared again out of the whiteness. He was small and round, with a fluffy white beard and rosy red cheeks peeking out like two cherries on top of an ice cream. He was bundled up against the chill in a cheerful outfit. Winston opened one eye as wide as he could manage and smiled weakly. I knew I'd find you, he squeaked. Father Christmas cocked an ear. What was that? He heard a noise. It was a tiny and squeaky sort of noise, but he definitely heard it. It sounded like a mouse. But what on earth would a mouse be doing up on the roof in this awful weather? He looked around him and spotted what looked like the broken remains of a toy plane sticking out of a snowdrift. Then he spotted something else. Lying on the ground, almost completely covered in snow, was the tiniest mouse he'd ever seen, and he seemed to be holding on to something very tightly. Father Christmas gently picked Winston up and carefully placed him in his pocket for warmth. Then he looked with interest at the damp and crumpled piece of paper the little creature had been holding. It was an envelope, and it was addressed to him, and inside, a letter from Oliver, the little boy who lives above the toy shop on Mistletoe Street. Father Christmas scratched his head for a moment. He hadn't heard from Oliver this year. He'd thought maybe the boy had grown too old and had stopped believing. But now he had his letter in his hand. Had it got lost in the post? Could that tiny little creature have been trying to deliver it? Surely not on a fearful night like this. It seemed unbelievable, yet here was a mouse on the roof holding the letter in his paws. Extraordinary, said Father Christmas, shaking his head in amazement. He tucked Oliver's letter into his jacket for safety and carefully reached into his pocket. Winston had found a spare glove in there and had curled up inside it to keep him warm, so Father Christmas picked him up, glove and all, and looked at him. And what about you, he said quietly, as he stroked Winston's head. What would a brave little thing like you wish for Christmas? Winston didn't say anything. He was fast asleep. He just snuggled deeper into his warm makeshift sleeping bag and snored loudly. I see, said Father Christmas, as his eyes twinkled magically. He looked up at the sky. The wind had stopped howling and the blizzard had calmed. The snow was once again falling lazily on the city. I think I've got one extra little delivery to make before morning, he said, and he put Winston carefully back in his pocket, climbed into his sleigh, and with a flick of the reins, took off over the rooftops and up into the sky.